What do you think? Is it understood? Not everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Now we have to take one by one and discuss. Today I will be basically discussing approaches only, right? Methods and techniques we can discuss later, some other day. So we will be discussing approaches today. So approaches are very broad. Okay, now it can be the same thing is applied in the classroom teaching and learning. When you are organizing your teaching session, you have to have a very clear understanding what is my approach today for this lesson. Based on that approach, you will decide, you will select your methods and techniques. That is what you are going to actually plan your lessons. That is how you are going to plan your lessons. Are you okay?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, can I get you to look at this in this diagram you saw? I think you have actually jotted down it here. Now here you see. So we will start with approaches, teaching approaches. So based on teaching approaches, we can discuss next day the methods and techniques. Okay. Now here I have given a small definition for teaching approach. Can one of you read it, please?
Teaching approach. It is a set of principles, beliefs, or ideas about the nature of learning which is translated into the classroom teaching, the big idea holding a group of small ideas together.
Continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Teaching method, it is a systematic way of doing something. It implies an orderly, logical arrangement of steps. It is more procedural. It is a series of progressive acts performed by a teacher and students to achieve the objective of the lesson. Teaching technique, the personal art and the style of the teacher in carrying out the procedure of teaching.
Yeah. So you will have a slight understanding what this approach, method and technique is. But we have to actually discuss it further. And today I'm going to cover teaching approaches, right? So next day we will discuss based on different approaches, what are the methods and techniques that you can select. Are you ready?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Now let me open another document. Give me a second. Sriani. මේ මෙතන මේ මගේ මගේට තියෙන මට වතුර එකක් ගෙනත් දෙන්න. Okay. This is the wrong one I opened. Okay. Give me a second. Thank you. Right. Can you see the document?
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay. Look at this. Approaches. We are going to look at approaches now. Okay. When I told you approaches, they say, the literature says, there are two main approaches to learning. How many main approaches?
Two main approaches.
Two main approaches to learning. What are those two main approaches to learning? You can actually make your own notes, right? Teacher-centered approaches, teacher-centered approach to learning, teaching and learner-centered approach of teaching. අපි ආයි කියනවා teacher-centered approach and learner-centered approach or student-centered approach. Teacher-centered approach and student-centered approach. Are you okay?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, what are the two main approaches to teaching?
Teacher-centered approach and learner-centered approach.
Very good. So there are in between, there are some other approaches, but we are not going to look at each and every small approaches, but we basically can look at approaches by putting them into two extremes of the continuum. If you put them approaches into on a continuum, There are two extremes. One is teacher-centered approach. The other one is student-centered approach. So we will discuss the two main approaches, teacher-centered and learner-centered. There are basically two contrasting types of approaches to teaching. Kember reviewed studies that examine teachers' conceptions or approaches, beliefs of teaching, and summarized the major categories. In general, there are two contrasting concepts, the teacher-centered and student-centered. In between these two poles, there can be intermediate kind of conceptions or approaches, but we will explore only the main two, right? To know what are their characteristics. So here, this is the grid. So it is there, not in the note. You have to make your own notes now. Teacher-centered and student-centered or learner-centered. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Do you have pen and paper?
Yeah.
Please divide your paper into two columns. And name the two columns as teacher-centered and student-centered. Done?
Yeah, ma'am.
Every one of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And then nidagani hina bala bala, you can't be, right? Now you are at this, at your table, and you are making your own notes on this. Now you have a paper, the two main approaches of teaching, teacher-centered in one column, student-centered in another column, right? Now, first thing, theory of learning you have learned in pedagogical psychology. Am I right? Theories of learning have you learned?
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
Matakaida, what are the theories of learning? If you have not learned, you tell me, because it may not be with you all that I have discussed this. Did I discuss behaviorism and constructivism as learning theories with you? No.
No.
Right. So then you can write the first entry. So you need 3 columns then, Puta. I'm very sorry. You need 3 columns. How many columns?
3.
3 columns. The first one is for the entry, the criteria. Okay. How this criteria applies to teacher-centered and student-centered, we are going to look at. Then you can write in the first column the criteria, the first one, theory of learning. What is it? Theory of learning. Did you write? Theory of learning. So when you get the recording also, you can make your own note and bring it to my class next day, right? And I will go a bit faster, otherwise we will not have enough time, Nisa. But you have to make sure that you listen to the recording and complete this grid and bring it to the next class. And now, here and there, you make notes. Are you okay with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Now, theory of language learning kiyato, teacher-centered approach to teaching. If you want to use this approach, teacher-centered, the theory of language learning, that means theory of learning, how your learners will learn. What do you believe? What is your assumption about it? How do your learners learn this particular lesson? How will they learn? Here, first one, teacher-centered behaviorism. What is it? Behaviorism. What is it, Puta?
Behaviorism.
Behaviorism. So I'm going to actually...
Behaviorism.
Very good. Okay, that is it. I want you to actually make comment. So I will also open. Can you see the blank page?
Yeah, ma'am.
I will actually use this like this. So here the Damu feature. Right here, teacher-centered. Teacher-centered approach to teaching. Here, student student-centered approach to teaching. So we'll go like this. I can make it a bit bigger, right? So first I told you, මොකද first එක මම කිව්වේ ඔයගලන්ට? First එක යන්නේ learning theory. What is it? Learning theory. I will not type everything. You all see this now. So teacher-centered approach, learning theory is behaviorism. What is the learning theory? Behaviorism. In student-centered, the learning theory is constructivism. Constructivism. What is meant by learning theory? How the learner learns. How the learner learns. So the teacher has to think, what is my learning theory? Whether it is behaviorism or constructivism. How will they learn this lesson best? How will they learn this lesson best? Behaviorism or constructivism. So behaviorism, learning is habit formation. Learning is what? Habit formation. Purudha. You get them to repeat and they will form the habit. They will learn it. So constructivism, my students will learn better or the best if they learn by doing. Learn by doing. You call it learn by doing, discovery learn. Discovery learn. Learn by doing or discovery learn. Constructivism, learn by doing or discovery learn. Are you okay? Yeah. So now you have to think. Learning theory, how the learner learns. Whether it's, what do you believe in that? If you're teacher-centered approach teacher, you will think my learn will better learn if they actually repeat and form habits. If you are a student-centered, if you want to believe in student-centered approach, you think that your learner will learn better if they actually learn it and do, if they engage in discovery learning, if they engage in do and learn through hands-on experiences. So that is your philosophical assumption, right? That is what your belief about your students' learning. How do they learn best? If you are a teacher-centered one, you think they learn by actually repeating the same thing over and over and forming habits. If you are a student-centered teacher, you might think, no, they will learn better when you get them to do it and learn. When they get them to actually engage in discovery learning. When you get them to engage in trial and error learning. Trial and error. Error learning. That is what you will believe in that. So, are you okay with what I'm talking to you about? තේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් කියන්න පුතා, I can explain. Hello? I didn't get you.
Can you repeat only the trial and error learning?
Yeah, trial and error learning means, now in student-centered approach, the teacher believes that the learners learn better when you get them to do something and learn. Right? So if you really want them to know to plus 2 is 4, you will get them to actually have 2 apples and then have another 2 apples and then put them into one and then count. That is, you actually get them to, if not, you get them to engage in trial and error. For example, how to make a fruit salad. If you are a teacher-centered one, you think you will actually do it for them to see and learn. If you are a teacher-centered one, you get them to actually cut fruits and then mix them and see how much salt is to be added, how much sugar is to be added, what kind of these things to be added. They actually have to, you're not going to teach anything. They will actually do it on their own and discover new knowledge. Trial and so then what they discover new knowledge is not all 100% correct. It will be the wrong one and then they try again and then they miss less mistakes and then do it again because they are doing it and learning on their own. So because of that, it will be trial and error learning. They will make mistakes, definitely. But they will actually, by making mistakes, that they will learn how to do it better. Got it?
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you.
Right. Then we can look at the second element. Okay. Second element. Role of teacher. What is it? Role of teacher. In the teacher-centered approach, right? The role of teacher is the criteria now we are looking at to differentiate between teacher-centered and student-centered. If you are a teacher-centered teacher, so you have a big role to play. You are authoritative. I will further explain. You're authoritative. You are central to teaching and learning. And you are a knowledge imparter. You are a knowledge imparter. But if you are a student-centered teacher, you are a facilitator. You are a facilitator, not the center. Not the center. You are a knowledge manager. So now I have to explain it to you. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, now. Role of the teacher. If you are a teacher-centered teacher, you think you know everything, your student doesn't know anything. Very traditional, okay? Role of teacher. Teacher, you think you know everything, your students do not know anything. So you are the knowledge imparter. Teacher has knowledge. It is spoon-fed to the learner. It is spoon-fed to the learner. Spoon-fed you spoon feed the child. Am I right? You're spoon feeding the child because you only know the knowledge. So you have knowledge, you are imparting that knowledge to your students by spoon feeding. By spoon feeding. By spoon feeding. And the teacher is central. Teacher doesn't think of anything else, but she plans everything as she wants. You don't think of learning styles of your students, their interests, their different ability levels. Nothing is taken into consideration because you are the big figure. You are the main. Now it's a triangle. Students, teacher, and the material. Students, teacher, and the material. Most important out of the three in the teacher-centered approach is a teacher. But in student-centered, the most important out of teacher, student, and material is the student. So In teacher-centered, students' interest, student learning styles, students' individual differences, they are not taken into consideration. But teacher plans the way she wants. And teacher is authoritative because teacher thinks that teacher knows everything and students are empty vessels, Kerala. Because of that, she exercises high power. Now, traditional classrooms, it's like that, no? Very authoritative teacher. Students are very silent. But if you take student-centered approach, you believe in student-centered approach to teaching, you never be the authority. Instead, you're a facilitator. Why? Your students, they engage in classroom activities, tasks. They do tasks, hands-on experiences. They want to learn by doing. You are facilitating. When they need help, they will actually turn to you as to get help. And you're not the center. Students are at the center in the teaching learning process. Their interests, their styles, learning styles, they are all taken into consideration. And students are not empty vessels. Your learner is not an empty vessel. Instead, they have their existing knowledge. They have their existing knowledge. They come to the class not as a blank slate or empty vessel. In the student-centered approach, teacher believes that learners, they have some knowledge. They possess knowledge. That knowledge about the world, knowledge about the subject, life experiences. They come all these prior knowledge, with that prior knowledge. So you will think of actually making use of that prior knowledge and managing the classroom learning and teaching process without getting them to deviate from the lesson. You actually manage the classroom activities to get them to be in the lesson without deviating from it, by getting them to do activities and all that to discover what important knowledge to be discovered using their prior knowledge. So the teacher plays the role of knowledge manager because they have their own knowledge and there are other sources of knowledge and information, not only the teacher, right? There are other sources, videos, internet, books, materials, newspapers, everyday notices, advertisements. They all are actually learning materials. So teacher is not the only source of information. There are other sources of knowledge and information. Teacher will bring them also to the class and get the students to resource them and get them to actually discover new knowledge with the use of their existing knowledge, with the use of other sources of information and knowledge, and teacher actually get them to actually use them by managing work, by setting tasks and activities and all that, not to get them to deviate from the topic that you have to cover. That is the role of the teacher in student-centered classroom as the facilitator and knowledge manager. But if you are in the teacher-centered approach, you think, I know, only my knowledge is there. You don't believe in other sources of information. So you will go on talking, explaining. And then you will try to spoon feed by repeating the same thing over and over. Students just listen and learn. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Right. We'll look at the number 3. Now I don't have to explain it. Students' role. Students' role. If it is teacher-centered approach, what is the student role? They are very active or passive?
Passive.
They are passive listeners. They are passive listeners. They listen to the teacher talk and then, right. But in student-centered, they have to do it and learn. They have to do tasks set by the teacher and do execute that task, and by making mistakes using prior knowledge, help with the learning with the help of the others, that they will go on discovering, learning new knowledge by themselves. So they are very active in the class. They are very active learners in the class. So you can add passive learners, not the center. Here in student-centered classroom, student is the center, student at the center. And here they are passive. Here student-centered, they are very active learners. Okay, so you can elaborate more on that. And I can add another one. Here in the teacher-centered classroom, students are empty vessels. What is it? Students are empty vessels to be spoon-fed. But here in the student-centered classroom, learners are not empty vessels. They have prior or existing knowledge. Existing knowledge. They come to the class with prior or existing knowledge. Right? So because of that, you have to make use of this. We will be discussing them later on. How to make use of this. We will take English language. Okay? We all know English language. So now you want to teach them simple present tense. Now, if you're teacher-centered teacher, if you believe in teacher-centered approach, you will not think of what they already know about English. What they already know about the subject that you are going to talk about, you will not make use of that. You will go on explaining on simple present tense, active voice, S form, base form. This is how it is used. You will go on talking. But if you are a student-centered approach teacher, you believe in their existing knowledge. They know already what are regular activities, everyday activities we do. We get up early morning, we wash, we have breakfast, we go to school, we come back, they know. And they know the verbs, S form, base form, they already know that. They have learned it in a previous class. So to teach them simple present tense, you need them. Everyday activities, you use simple present tense to talk about everyday activities. They know what everyday activities are. And they know you need S form and the base form. They know how to form S form and base form already. So you will make use of that knowledge and start with what they already know. And then get them to discover today's new knowledge. That is your plan if you are a student-centered teacher. You get my point?
Yeah.
We will be discussing them throughout this module. Don't worry, right? This is just an idea that I want you to have. Throughout this module, there are instances when we are talking about methods, techniques, teaching models, and everything. These things appear, right? So this is, don't worry. Then fourth one, here in teacher role, student role, when it comes to a teacher-centered student role, students are passive. They are active in student-centered. අපි යමු fourth එකට. In the fourth one, mistakes. Can you have an educated guess about mistakes that the students do in the class? Can you think of an educated guess? Have an educated guess about the mistakes that the students can do in the class? Teacher-centered, mistakes not tolerated. What is it? Mistakes not tolerated. Why? If they make a mistake, it will become a habit. Why you get them to repeat the same? Am I right?
Yeah.
Not tolerated. But in student-centered, they have to do it and learn. They have to discover new knowledge by themselves. They have to engage in trial and error. Then mistakes are tolerated and proof of learning. If they commit mistakes, you don't get angry. That is part and parcel of learning. It's proof that they are learning. They are engaged in learning activities. That is how mistakes are looked at in teacher-centered and learner-centered. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Right. Can you think of something else to add here, distinguishing between teacher-centered and student-centered? Can you think of? Right. Here, number 5. Underlying principles. Underlying principles. Underlying principles, we can talk about teacher-centered and student-centered. Here, now you know constructivism. They have to learn by doing. So you can't just get them to do it and learn. They will not learn. Am I right? Will they learn? Now I want you to learn this. Can you learn this? Can you tell your students? No. You have to facilitate. How can you facilitate? There are 3 things that you can do. One thing is get them to engage in cooperative learning. What is it? Get them to engage in cooperative learning. I will explain it further, right? And then the other one is, right, cooperative learning and authentic materials and tasks. Here, in teacher-centered, that is not actually taken into consideration. I will actually further explain. Now here in student-centered, teacher doesn't go on explaining, getting students to listen and learn. Instead, teacher give them tasks. They have to do it and discover new learning, new knowledge. So that is student-centered. So for that, you have to facilitate their new knowledge, discovery of knowledge. For the facilitation of discovery of new knowledge, they themselves actually learn new knowledge. Teacher just facilitate by getting them to do tasks, and the tasks you get them to do under these principles. That is prior knowledge recall. You have to make use of these. What is it? Cooperative learning. Cooperative learning, learning in groups and pairs. Cooperative learning means learning in groups and pairs. Then it's not only one head. There are several heads. So they can share their knowledge and understanding and thinking, and they can actually learn. So they can actually something that they can't do on their own. When you group them, when you pair them up, they can actually get together and do. One head is better, it's 2 heads are better than one head concept. So you always get them to work in groups and pairs, because then discovery learning is facilitated. Then you always use authentic materials and tasks. Authentic means real life, right? If you want them to actually read and understand, you will give them something that they have to read in everyday life. If you want them to write something, you will get them to write something that they need in everyday life or exam purposes or whatever. Now, suppose you want them to read and you want them to read fast. So using this technique of scanning, so you will get them to read newspaper classifieds. Real life tasks and materials are used. So that is constructivism. Then it's easy for them to learn. The other one is you will not treat them as empty vessels. You will actually plan activities based on what they already know. So because of that, you will begin your lesson with recalling prior knowledge, which is important for the learning of today's knowledge. something relevant to today's knowledge that they already know, it is recalled by you by asking questions, by giving them a small game. You get them to recall what is helpful for them to learn new knowledge, but they already know, and it's helpful in learning new knowledge today. You will recall it. Then they can easily use that knowledge to actually construct, build new knowledge on top of it. So that is, you have to be, the teacher has to be very skilled. Just because that the teacher knows the subject matter, you know your mathematics, you know your English, you can't just go and teach. In teacher-centered, yes. Because you walk into the classroom, go on teaching. In teacher-centered classroom, you can do that. But in student-centered classroom, you have to actually plan your lessons by planning activities for the students. And the students, you have to put them into groups, you have to put them into pairs, you have to actually give them some games or questions or something to recall the existing knowledge, prior knowledge, which is helpful in understanding new knowledge. And you have to actually bring authentic materials and tasks and prepare them for your students, because you're not going to talk, you're going to get the students to do it. So you have to come prepared as the teacher. Are you okay?
Yes, ma'am.
It's like Greek, then it's okay.
It's okay, ma'am.
Right, okay. Now, can you think of one more element? Then you know a lot about something about teacher-centered and student-centered approaches, two continuums, right? One is at this end or traditional teaching. Have you read Ambaya Haluva? No, not Ambaya Haluva. This are Jinnah and Upali Nimoked. Madoldu. Have you read Madoldu? You know the type of teacher with always a cane in hand and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is traditional type of teacher. You go in front of the class, whole class is very silent, and a teacher goes on talking. The students don't know anything attitude. Teacher is the authority and all that. But now it's different. Those things don't apply anymore. කියලා තමයි කියන්නේ. එහෙමනම් අපිට තව ටිකක් මේවා pros and cons කතා කරන්න පුළුවන්. Now, teacher-centered classroom, do you see teacher-centered approaches used by teachers even now? I'm not referring to this adult education, online education, that is okay. I'm talking about this school education with young learners. Teachers, do they use this teacher-centered approach still? Not 100%, but to a greater extent. Do they use them?
Normally they don't.
They don't. Are you sure? Are you sure? Somewhat teacher-centered classrooms are there. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because both approaches, they have their own advantages, they have their own disadvantages, they have their own pros and cons. So because of that, sometimes you can see some teachers are teacher-centered even in this traditional class, even in this modern context. What are the teacher-centered approach advantages? Can you think of that? Advantages of teacher-centered. If you have a class of 50 or 60, will you be able to use this student-centered, getting them to do activities? You are monitoring them and you're facilitating them, you're guiding them, getting them to tasks, activities to do it and learn. Is it possible with large classes? Is it possible with large classes? Can you give me a second?
Okay, ma'am.
Hello, I'm back. Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, you can hear me, right? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, ma'am, we can hear, ma'am.
Right. Okay. Now, is this too much for you? No, no?
No, ma'am.
Right. Okay. I will send you a very nice note. Then you can read it and prepare your own read and comma, and you can listen to the recording also. Because then methods and techniques are very easy to discuss. Once this approaches, its features and everything is discussed. Okay. Because of that, I think this is good, Kela, to know more a lot about these two approaches, Kela. Then it has its own advantages and disadvantages. Right, tell me. One advantage is how whether you like it or not, teacher-centered, making your students passive learners. That you will actually still use teacher-centered approach. When you have a class of 50 or 60. Most of our government schools, if you see, the large classes and little space for you to move and monitor their group work tasks they carry out. They have no actually space to actually walk here and there and do something in the class. Whether you like it or not, the only possibility is getting them to listen to you. So large classes can be handled. It's an advantage in teacher-centered approach. But in student-centered approach, it's a disadvantage. If you have a large class, you can't think of actually applying this, using this approach. So it's the other way around, okay? One thing. And suppose now you have a syllabus to cover. Now you have a big syllabus and 2 units to cover in 2 periods. 2 units before the exam, you have to cover 2 units in 2 periods. Actually, teacher-centered is time economical in time, right? It's economical in time. That is, you can actually explain it and quickly finish it off. If you really want your students to do tasks and discover new knowledge on their own, it is time consuming. They need lot of time. They will take time. You need to give them time to do tasks and discover. So that is actually an advantage in teacher-centered. A vast area can be covered, content can be covered in a limited time. But it's a disadvantage in student-centered, though it's more effective. Students will not actually, it will take a lot of time. So if you have only 2 periods, 2 units to be covered before the exam, you will not think of going student-centered there. Likewise, okay, both have their own advantages and disadvantages. Anith එක teacher-centered එකේ another disadvantage. Student-centered එකේ advantage එකක් තමයි when the students are active in the classroom, they do it and learn. When they are discovering their knowledge, better remembering, better learning. It's better remembering and better learning. I want to actually tell you, there is something called code of learning by Dale. Code of learning by Edgar Dale. I will get an image here. Then I can share it with you. Right. Let me share that. Okay. Is it being shared my desktop? Is it being shared? Can you see my desktop, Putta?
No,
Am I not? Now?
No, ma'am.
No. Right. Let me. Right. Hold on. I will share it. Right. Now look at this. Can you see this?
Yes, ma'am.
Don't know whether it's big enough for you to see. Now you look at this. Dale's cone of experience or learning. I see and I forget. I hear, I remember. I do and I understand. So which is better? I see and I forget. If you get them to see something, they will forget it easily. If they get you to hear and they will remember, but if they will remember, but they will not understand. But if you get them to do something, I do and I understand. If you get them to do something and learn, they will understand it and learn. Just not remembering by heart and learn, rote learning, they will understand it if you get them to do it. So that is the basis for Dale's cone of experience or learning. Right. Then look at this. If you get them to read only 10% of what they read, if they get you to hear, you talk, they hear only 20% of what they hear. If you get them to see images, videos, and all that, only 30% of what they'll see. If you get them to hear and see, many typical classroom, you get them to hear and see, no? Visuals and teacher explains and all that, 50%. But if you give them hands-on workshops and collaborative learning, 70% of learning and remembering. But if you get them to do it and learn, හරියට නිකම් presentation එකක් and all that simulation and all that, 90% of what they learn, they will remember. This is termed as Dale's cone of learning. Okay. So because of that, what do you think? It's an advantage of which approach?
Centered.
Who-centered? Student-centered, learner-centered. When you get them to do it and learn, how much is remembered? 90%. But if you are teacher-centered, just you talk, just show some visuals and all that, get the students to be passive, only maximum of 50% of learning. But if you want 90% or more of learning, you have to get them to do it and learn as it happens in student-centered classroom. So that is Dale's code. So more learning in student-centered, but still it has its own limitations. Time consuming, can't handle big classes, some difficult content, some difficult subjects cannot be taught in using student-centered because they need the teacher's explanations. Okay. If it is the difficult content, you will first go teacher-centered and then think of actually transforming it into student-centered and all that. So likewise, it has its own limitations as well. And if you are in a teacher-centered class, some more factors I'm giving, right? Classroom arrangement will be teacher in front, students seated individually. If it is student-centered classroom, you need more spacious classrooms because students have to be in groups, maybe in circles or half circles, because they have to discuss, they have to get together and do work. So you can't actually use a very limited space and get them to form groups. So you need spacious classrooms to go student-centered because you need to make arrangements, physical arrangements of the classroom, half circles and circles. So if you don't have space, you can't, right? You can't just get them to sit in rows and ask them to do group work power because it's a feature. So spacious classrooms are needed. And noise, classroom management. Teacher-centered classroom management is easy because teacher is the authority, only teacher talks, student silent. But student-centered, they are supposed to actually do group work, pair work, discussions, talk to each other. Then noisy and classroom management will be very difficult. So these are the kind of some of the pros and cons of teacher-centered approach and student-centered approach. Are you okay? Now, Mata Kianda, I want to ask each and every one of you. Do you understand any questions on the two approaches?
No.
No, no questions. No questions. Right. Now, before I move on to my next topic, I want to talk to you about this. Now, 17th, you're having your exams. No? So our next class is coming next week, Wednesday. Am I right? Because your class is 3 hours Wednesdays. Are you aware of it?
No.
You have not got your timetables.
Not yet, ma'am.
We see the timetable.
Not yet, ma'am.
Sorry.
We didn't get yet.
This is how it is set, Puta. Petra, how come you know that you all are having today's lecture? If the timetable is,
Yeah, only today's link we got like only today's message. Yeah.
That you have to know, Puta, your lectures, there are 7 days of lecturing. How many days?
7 days.
Yeah, they are 3-hour sessions because of my unavailability, right? I'm available only on Wednesdays. So they are 3-hour sessions for 7 days. Every Wednesday from 7 to 10. Are you okay with that?
Okay, ma'am.
Right. Then I want to know that we are meeting again next Wednesday from 7 to 10. So likewise, we have 7 sessions. Okay. Before you come to my next session, I will send you the breakdown of what I'm going to cover in the 7 sessions. And this week, I will not give you any homework because before we meet again, you're having your pedagogy exam. Am I right? Not sorry, pedagogical psychology exam.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of that, this week, you don't study anything of this module. You concentrate on pedagogical psychology and do your best at the examination. And next time when you come, I will be, by then you will get all the 7 days, the breakdown. First day I have done already. This next 6 days, 3-hour sessions, but I am going to cover with you all. I will send you the breakdown of it. Are you okay? Are you okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Right, okay. And ask them to send you the timetable because I got my timetable. Can I read it to you all? I thought that you all have received it, Kiela. Let me open my WhatsApp and it is, I told them it is every Wednesday. You have 7 sessions every Wednesday, 7 to 10. The dates are 13th today, 20th this month, 27th this month. October, we have 4 sessions, 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th. So there are 3-hour sessions every Wednesday from 7 to 10. So we have to continue for another 1 hour today. You're okay, Kila? I hope. I thought you all know, Kila.
No, ma'am. We only knew that it starts at 7. We thought
Mm.
only 2 hours.
So are you okay with continuing? Because that is how the timetable is set. If you want, I can give you a 10-minute break. Normally, if it's a 3-hour session, we need a break. 10 minute break can be given. And I will finish sharp at 10. What do you think? Can you continue, Kila? I'm asking.
Ma'am, let's have 10 minutes break. No, ma'am.
Yeah, better. No, because at a stretch, 3 hours is difficult. Normally, else everywhere you have 3 hour sessions, even online. But I will give you a 10-minute break, but make sure that you all are back. Huh? Right? Right. Now it is 9:10. So make sure that 9:20 you are back, Kiala. Please don't leave the class because then it's your, I feel very odd no when few people are there. So 9, I'm giving you a break. It's 9, almost 9:10, 9:20. Make sure that you all come. Huh? I will finish sharp 10. Okay. Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, okay. We'll wait another 1 minute for the other everyone to be back. And then now I'm actually a little bit worried that you didn't know that you have to be up till be in this lesson till 10 kila because of that. Maybe some of you all having kids and all that kila they told me. But it's okay. Somehow the other will manage. It's only another right few more minutes now. We'll start and it's only a few more minutes, right? Few more minutes, kind of half an hour more, like that. So now you know the two main approaches as student-centered and teacher-centered. So when you have to do a lesson based on different criteria, right? Based on different things, you might decide first whether you are going to be a teacher-centered, you're going to adopt teacher-centered approach, or whether you're going to adopt student-centered approach. We are not to say this approach is better than this. You will select the teacher-centered or student-centered depending on its own advantages, disadvantages, and which is actually applicable to your context. As I told you, if it is a vast lesson within a limited time, you will actually go teacher-centered that day. Now, suppose it's difficult context. Content is difficult. Students can't discover. You will decide on teacher-centered. Suppose now it's a less number today and it's an interesting topic that the students will like to explore. You will organize a kind of, you will go student-centered, right? Likewise, sometimes actually we are in eclecticism. Eclecticism is, I have spoken to you this eclecticism in psychology also. Eclecticism means you don't stick to one theory, one concept. So here you don't stick to one teacher-centered, 100% or teacher-centered, student-centered. But you can draw elements from both the approaches and combine and as feasible and practical and as applicable to your context, you will draw some features from teacher-centered and some features from student-centered and go eclectic as well. Are you okay? Are you okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Right. Can I show you something? Right. Can I show you something? Now here, there are some scenarios. Okay. I have put some scenarios. Now I want to know some scenarios. Give me a second, right? Here. Scenario. We have to reflect on these. Before that, I want you to look at this. Now here, there are some other approaches in between, I told you. There can be other approaches in between. Okay. So I want you to read it and see this approach is more into teacher-centered or student-centered. This approach is more into teacher-centered or student-centered. Quick round without wasting much time. The first one, subject matter-centered approach. Subject matter gains primacy over that of the learner. What is more important is the content to be covered, not the learner. This is into more learning styles or learners' interests. They are not taken into much consideration, but the teacher's concern is completing the content. That kind of approach is referred to as subject matter-centered approach. So if you put it in the continuum of one end teacher-centered, one end student-centered, this is more into student-centered or teacher-centered?
Teacher-centered.
Teacher-centered. Okay. So you can take covering the subject matter is the concern of the teacher. So central is not the learner, but the content. So it's more into teacher-centered. Okay, right, very good. Second one, teacher-dominated approach. In this approach, only the teacher's voice is heard. He or she is the sole dispenser of knowledge, information. Teacher-dominated approach. Which end? Teacher-centered or student-centered? Which is obvious.
Teacher-centered.
Very good. Interactive approach. Classroom activities are a priority and there is more student talk and less teacher talk.
Student-centered.
Student-centered. No? Classroom activity, again, tasks are given. Students talk, teacher doesn't talk much. Student talk time is high, teacher talk time is less. That is the jargon you use, okay? Student talk time is high, teacher talk time is less because it's activity-based, classroom activities, which is termed as interactive. It is more into student-centered. Very good. Then the fourth one, constructivist approach. The students are expected to construct new knowledge and meaning by connecting to the prior knowledge.
Student-centered.
Highly student-centered, no? Very good. Banking approach. The teacher deposits knowledge into the empty minds of students for them to commit it to memory.
Teacher-centered.
Bank, teacher-centered. Bank karano. Teacher deposits knowledge to the empty minds, empty vessels, spoon feeding, right? So that is highly teacher-centered. Then integrated approach. It makes the teacher connects what he or she teaches to the other lessons of the same subject or connects his or her lessons with other subjects. Interdisciplinary approach. This is bit into more. You can have an educated guess. This criteria we didn't discuss. But it's more into teacher-centered or student-centered. Authentic situations, authentic tasks, authentic materials. Then authentic and real life. Real life vidiyata karanawa nan it is interdisciplinary. Am I right? Hello?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, in student-centered, we use authentic situations, authentic materials, authentic tasks. So if you take authentic task, you can't separate it. This is science, this is maths, this is English and all that. You give them authentic tasks. So you get them to observe the life cycle of the butterfly. And you get them to learn English words, you get them to actually read some materials, you get them to draw pictures and all that. So all these are integrated to each other discipline. So this is into student-centered or teacher-centered. Can you have an educated guess? It is student-centered, no integrated, because real life tasks, real life situations, real life materials, you can't say, no, this is for the sake of English, this is for the sake of science and all that. It's not there. Now, if you take Finland model of teaching, that is the best model of teaching in the world now. They don't have subjects, they have situations. And they have to actually apply mathematical concepts, language concepts, other related religious, they don't have religious knowledge, ethical concepts, and solve the problem. So they are integrated. So integratedness comes with student-centered classroom because the authenticity is promoted. Real life tasks, materials are used. The next one, collaborative approach. It will welcome teamwork, pair work, group discussion. What is it? In the continuum.
Student-centered.
Highly student-centered, cooperative learning. Individualistic approach. It gets students to work by themselves.
Student-centered.
Or
Individual.
Individuals as individuals. Not as groups, not as pairs and all that. Teacher-centered by themselves. Not in no interaction. It's misleading by themselves. Discover It's a bit misleading, but it's actually student teacher centered. Direct teaching approach. The teacher directly tells or shows what is to be taught.
Teacher-centered.
Highly teacher centered. Indirect guided approach. Indirect guided approach. The teacher guides the learner to discover things for himself or herself. The teacher facilitates the learning process by allowing the learner to be engaged in the learning process with his or her guidance. Teacher only guides, teacher only facilitates. Get the students to discover. What is it?
Student-centered.
Student-centered. Why I have put all these things here? Because I don't have a note on student-centered and teacher-centered. But look at them. They are actually about teacher-centered or student-centered. They are the features of one student-centered or teacher-centered. So you can actually learn the words that you have to use to discuss teacher-centered and student-centered by referring to this. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I will get you to look at these scenarios, reflections. Now you know the features of student-centered approaches and teacher-centered approach. So you have to actually, I will give you scenarios. You have to reflect on that. So what is your candid answer to this question? What is your conception of approach to teaching? What aspects would you like to change in your teaching practice to better align with your spouse conception of teaching approach to teaching? Let's see. Teacher A prepared a lot of materials and tried his best to explain in as much detail as possible. He thinks the more he can tell the students, the more students can learn. Each question has a fixed answer, and as soon as students make mistakes, he moves on to the other students. What kind of a teacher is seen here? More into
Teacher-centered.
teacher-centered, because the belief that as much as he speaks, the students will learn, Kenika. Actually, it's actually highly teacher-centered. Okay. Second one, teacher B. Can one of you read? Teacher B?
Teacher B heard about activity learning and he decided the best way to teach is to play games and interact with his students. He accepted all students' responses because he wanted to show the students he is a kind teacher.
This is, if they have good and bad, the teacher B has good and bad. What is it? Using play and games and interaction in the classroom is really good about teacher B. Am I right?
Yeah.
But accepting all students' responses as correct answers because he wants to be a kind teacher to the students, is this right or wrong?
Wrong.
Wrong, right? Then students doesn't know whether they are right or wrong. Students want feedback. So you have to actually learn to give feedback, constructive feedback, without actually letting down the students. Just because that you don't want to hurt the students, you can't accept all the answers they give. So constructive feedback, the teacher B has to actually adopt. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Teacher C, can you read teacher C quickly?
Teacher C thinks about what is important in the subject area as well as what students would be interested to know and how she can link concepts with experience when preparing the materials. She varied her activities from lecturing, question asking to group work. She was interested to find out what students know and do not know and why they cannot understand. The questions were of different types and she listened to student responses with interest to find out what they were thinking.
Right. She is a bit good, no?
Yeah.
Am I right? Any shortcoming here? I think all good. Teacher C has all student-centered teacher characteristics because varied activities and then students' interests are taken into consideration, and then knowledge and knowledge is actually connected with experience in preparing materials, that is making it authentic, right? That is actually a very good teacher. Teacher D, can you read?
Teacher D, in her science class, asked the class to look at the diagram of a microscope in the textbook. She then explained and wrote notes about these different parts of a microscope. After that, she asked the students to complete the exercise in the textbook, matching the names of the major components of a microscope with their functions.
This teacher D needs improvement or not? Diagram of a microscope in the textbook. What would be better?
Authentic.
Sorry?
Showing a microscope.
Definitely getting them to actually see a microscope and actually use it. Right? That maybe that she actually opted for this. We don't know whether this is a very rural school. No microscope is available. Scope is available. We don't know. There are reasons for the teachers to be like that. Okay. But we are supposed to reflect on that. Maybe that the best thing is to get them to actually see a microscope and then to use it or whatever. But the teacher has not done that, maybe because that lack of resources. They don't have a microscope in the school. There are schools like that now. Maybe that is what. And the teacher explaining and getting them to write notes is also very, students are passive there, no? And this is a science lesson where they have to go to the lab and see microscope and all that and ask questions from the teacher. But this can't happen because they don't have a microscope or something, or teacher doesn't take them to the laboratory. Asking them to actually do the exercise in the textbook is, I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, because it will help them retention of facts, what they learn through hands-on experience. Now, if the teacher could take them to the laboratory and get them to actually see a microscope and then talk about the parts of the microscope and come back to the class and getting them to do the textbook activity is really good for retention, right? That's last part is okay. Are you okay? Right. Now, Puta, my discussion on approaches. That is, of course, I have actually done. Okay? Are you listening to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is, of course, I have done. Now, I want to tell you, we are going to look at give me a second. Methods of teaching. What is it? Methods of teaching, the second cycle. You saw the second cycle. If not the second part of it, based on the approaches, we will select what?
Method.
Based on the, we will select, what is this? We will select our approaches, no? Based on the, give me a second, because something is wrong with this. Based on the approaches, now we have to select the methods that we are going to use. Now, when we are to select the methods, what are the methods available? So if you have pen and paper, can you tell me what are the methods? So some methods, traditional methods are new methods. So we can't discuss everything, but we will have a look at some methods, okay? And if you take very common and everybody knows, lecture method, okay, lecture method. Then demonstration method, you can take down. So lecture method and demonstration method, lecture method is talk and chalk method. Teacher talk and writes on the board, students listen. Lecture method. This is very traditional and teacher-centered. And then you have demonstration method. Now, demonstration method is teacher show it to them. අපි කියන show and tell method කියලා. Teacher show how to do something and explains it. And students just watch, observe and learn. So එක අපිට කියනවා අරක talk and chalk, මේකට කියනවා show and tell කියලා. They are highly teacher-centered methods that were used in the traditional classrooms. But in the student-centered approach to teach, there are actually interactions, students' activities, group work, pair work, interaction, students' participation is high, students' talk time is high, students are very active in the class and tasks are given for them to do and all these things are there. So what are the methods? Can you just have an educated guess here? Discussion method. What is it? Discussion method. Then scientific method. It's a highly student-centered method. If you are a student-centered teacher, if you adopt student-centered approach to teaching, you can use these methods. Discussion method, scientific method, flipped method, FLIPPED, flipped method. Traditional classroom is actually turned upside down in that method. So how? We have to know. Flipped method. And then you can use discussion, discovery, scientific, flipped method, and then project method. Are some of the methods. Okay, project methods. They are some of the methods of student-centered methods. Questionnaires of course, Shara, is not a method. Questionnaire is a technique. Actually, wrong word you have used. Questions and answers are techniques. Question and answers are techniques, not method. Questionnaire is actually instrument in child study method. It's a child study method to know. It's a different one. Okay, I will explain it further some other day. Not today. When you're tired, I don't think that I have to actually talk about these questionnaires. Questionnaires are actually child study methods, if not research methods. In school context, to teacher, it's a child study method to know more about the child's background and all that. If you use questions, it's a technique, not a method. Okay? Questioning technique. Techniques we will learn. Questionnaire is different. Okay? It's a survey one. Then these methods are there. Now, we have another 15 minutes. I will actually give you a very small discussion point now. I want you to be actively discuss this. Now, suppose it's the lecture method. Now, I really don't have to talk to you about lecture method because, it's highly teacher-centered. So, its characteristics. What are the characteristics? Lecture method. Teacher is the authority. Teacher in front of class. Teacher talks, students listen. They are passive. Right? Teacher is authoritative in the class. No interaction is promoted in the class. And no interaction is promoted in the class. And large classes are handled by the teacher. Vast content is covered because a teacher explains everything. So it's time saving. Like that, this is lecture method. You can add all the teacher-centered approach characteristics to talk about lecture method. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now my question is this. Lecture is a method. So approach that this method is used. If your teacher-centered approach is adopted for this particular lesson, you can use lecture method. Now here, even if you are made to use lecture method due to some reasons, maybe it is only 2 weeks, a vast content to be covered. You decide you will go use teacher-centered and use lecture method based on teacher-centered approach. So you have your own reasons to select this method and approach. But are there, because as it's a very commonly used method in Sri Lankan context, okay, are there ways that we can actually make it a bit student-centered by adding some elements to it to make it a better lecture method? It is not actually very hard and fast lecture method. You have your own reasons to select the lecture method and to go teacher-centered, but you're going to make it a bit interesting and towards student-centered by incorporating some good elements into this lecture method. So to make it more effective, what kind of elements can be incorporated into lecture method to make it more interesting and effective? Can you just talk about it? Now, for example, lecture is teacher going on talking. So to make it less boring and more effective and interesting, what can you do? What can you do? Some suggestions from you. Now you're a teacher, you can't help it due to some reasons that you have selected teacher-centered approach and lecture method. But you know it's very ineffective and boring and all that. Less learning and all that. So how can you make it more effective and interesting and more participative? What can you do? Right. One
Right.
thing. Sorry, yes. Sorry.
Using visual aids.
Definitely very good. You can actually use some visual aids and other materials to actually make it more interesting and clearer to your students, right? It's not only listening, you can make it listening and seeing both. Listen and you can not only hear, but hear and see. Then you can make it 50% according to Dale. So what you said is really good. Yes, definitely yes. What you go on talking, you can use PowerPoint, right? So visual representation of it, maybe visuals, maybe videos and all that you can use. So you can make it not only hear, but hear and see. If you hear only 20%, if you hear and see 50% of remembering and learning. So that is a very good idea. So that's very good answer. What else that you can do? What
Asking
else?
questions.
Yeah, that is also very good. Asking questions time to time. Because you go on talking. Students are passively listening. You do not know whether they understand or they don't understand. So you can, time to time, you can stop your lecture and you can ask them questions to check their understanding. And it will break the monotony and you can come to know whether they have understood or not as well. Am I right? So it's a very good thing. If you are to use lecture method, you can actually make it more effective by asking questions time to time. It will break monotony and it will get the teacher to know whether your students have understood what you have spoken to them. Very good. Another thing that you can do. So you all know. Yeah, yes?
Make them read and also write.
In between.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Let them, you can give them some activities after a part of the lecture method, after part of explaining everything. You can give them some writing or reading activity. Very good. That is also, I agree with you. Then come back to your lecture method. Go on talking the second part. And then a small activity like, yes. Okay, I agree. Then what else? And always now you go on explaining. They go on listening. You do not know whether they understand or not. Because of that, to make them understand what you say better, if you are using lecture method, always make sure you give them examples. What is it? You give them examples. And you always create comparisons, examples and comparisons. Then they will understand it better. Because you go on talking, students are passive, they hardly ask questions in a typical class. So you know it's a lecture. So you can actually always, you want your students to understand. So for them to understand what you say easily, you can always support your subject matter or the points with examples and analogies. Analogies can comparisons. Then they can easily understand. Got my point?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you think another way of actually making it a bit more effective and less boring? You can't help it. You have decided on this. You have your own reasons for deciding on teacher-centered approach and the lecture method. But still you want to make it more effective. So you have to use your own elements and strategies as elements to incorporate into lecture method. As we are eclectic now. Okay. So what else that you can do?
Using humor.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, very good. You're very intelligent. You have to use a little bit of humor to keep them actually on your lecture. Humor will actually make them interested in the work. So because of that, you will use humor, by humor sparingly, right? අපි දන්නවනේ මං කියලා තියෙන humor very smartly, you have to use humor. So humor sparingly, you can use humor in the class, and then they will become interested in what you're talking to them about. Okay, right? That is, yes, I agree with you. So now it's 9:54. I think that you didn't know, no, today we have to stay till 10 kila, but Putadi, we have another 6 more days. A lot of content to be covered, which are very useful to you in your teaching profession, right? So this is one of the important module. So because of that, by this week, you don't study. You have to get ready for pedagogical psychology, right? And do your exam paper very well. And after that, next week, Wednesday, when you come, I will give you a 15-minute break, definitely. But you have to know you have to be in my class till 10 o'clock, make arrangements. I also had my dinner before 7 today, right? So likewise, make arrangements and be in the class. We have a lot to cover. And after the second session, if this week I'm not going, I will give you some homework also. Otherwise, the content is vast. We can't cover. So every week you will have something to do and come and present quickly, because otherwise it's difficult, because it is into planning lessons and teaching models and all that. No, so everything cannot be done in class. I will get you to actually apply what we discuss and then do some work and bring. So you have to be ready for that also. But this week, forget about that and focus on pedagogical psychology. So all the best for your pedagogical psychology examination paper. And I will make sure that I will, as soon as possible, in 2 weeks time, like that, I will try my level best to give all the marks to the institute. Okay, the 2 assignments and the written paper. That I will do. So I want you to do your best, and hope today's lesson, lecture one on educational technology, what we discussed today is clear to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Then today 5 minutes, we will stop because you didn't know that you're staying up till 10 Kiala. So next time you are prepared, you know that you have to be in the class till 10. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you so much.
All the very best for your pedagogical psychology. Okay? The whole
Okay.
week you have to study, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
You know the areas. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, ma'am.
Okay.